There's a story that allows a very pointed question to be asked. It's a story about that prince who at the early age of 18 years old found himself the monarch of his realm. His father, the king, had left 3 wise advisors, viziers, for him to consult with before he passed on. And the young prince, now a king, chose a 4th advisor, a young man who was more of his own age. So with these 4 advisors, he ruled well, and his kingdom flourished and was prosperous. But then it was time for him to be married, because it was expected that an heir would be produced. So he met and fell in love with a princess of another realm, and they were married. They loved one another very dearly. But time passed, and no heir was produced. This was the only blight on their happiness, their idyllic life. So they called all the physicians, all the soothsayers, the magicians from far and wide, from many countries, to try to help them, but to no avail. The king's beloved wife begged him, take a consort, take concubines, and allow them to produce an heir. But no heir was produced. It seemed every woman was barren. So time passed, and the king realized that the only recourse there was to meet Kadir, the green one. But it was known that Kadir resided in the spirit realms. The mysterious Kadir lived in the occult, and only manifest in form when man was in great need or at the crossroads in his life. He was not to be found by man. So when the king sent out messengers, criers into the streets to call for anyone, saying he would offer a bag of gold, 1,000 gold pieces, to anyone who could bring him Kadir, the people knew that this mysterious Kadir lived in the spirit world and could not be found. So no one came forward. But then there is another part of the story, and that is about the camelteer. A camelteer, a poor man. His wife and his only possession was an old camel, a beast of burden that used to carry goods for people so that they could earn a meager living. But one day the camelteer went into his barn, and his camel lay dead. He was bereft. He beat his chest. He went to his wife to say, "We're old. What are we going to do? This camel was our livelihood." But there was need to put bread on the table. So he went out to the forest to gather thorns. He became a thorn gatherer. Those pieces of wood that he took into town that people used to light their fires. And his wife did embroidery, and she sewed a few pieces so that they were able to make the barest of livings. But one day, when the camel Tyr was in town selling his thorns, the town crier was out, calling for anyone who could bring Caidir to the king. So the camel Tyr went home to his wife, and he said, "I have a solution to our poverty. I am going to go to the king." His wife begged him, How can you find Caidir? Caidir, we know, is of spirit, in the occult." But he said, "No, I will go to the king, where old and poor we have nothing to lose." So the camel Tyr went to the king, and he said, "I will find Caidir for you, but you must give me the 1,000 coins to start." So the king, looking at this poor, poverty-stricken man, but being desperate, what could he do? He handed the 1,000 gold coins to the camel Tyr and said, "You must bring back Caidir within 40 days. If you do not, you must give back this gold and your life will be forfeited." So the camel Tyr went back with his bag of gold to his wife. He had his house repaired, the leaking roof, the windows replaced. But unlike those who sometimes become rich overnight, he was a good man. He gave largesse. He called all those in need, and he fed and clothed them. Every week they put on a feast for their neighbors and the people of the town. And soon the gold coins were eaten away, and the days passed until the 39th day. And so the camel Tyr took out his last gold coin and spent it on food, a great reception for all. They came, feasted, and they left, leaving the camel Tyr and his wife. Midnight came, and there was a gentle knock on the door. Camel Tyr said, "Who could that be at this time of night? Maybe it's one of our guests who's forgotten something." But when they opened the door, standing there was an old dervish in a patched work cloak, and he said, "I'm lost and hungry. Would you give me some food and lodging?" Immediately he was welcomed in, and the wife went to gather what leftovers there were from the feasting to bring to him, which he ate with relish. And then they offered him a pallet, a mattress for the night, but he said, "No, I don't need," and he lay down and put his patchwork cloak over his head and fell fast asleep. But the couple did not sleep, because it was the dawning of the 40th day, and they knew that their fate was sealed. They cried and wept in each other's arms, and sure as the dawn was coming up, there were knocks on the door, the sound of horses' hooves. And when they opened the door, the soldiers came in to say, "You must be taken to the king's presence." And the dervish, who had woken up, said, "Would you allow me to accompany you?" Well, the dervish was an old and obviously gentle, holy man, and so the soldiers were not intimidated, and they allowed him to go along when they took the camel tear to be presented to the king. And so when the camel tear was at the foot of the king's throne, the king said, "Well, have you found Qadir?" And he said, "No, I have not." So the king said, "Well, you have to pay back the gold and forfeit your life." And so the camel tear said, "I am in your hands, my monarch." So beside the king, on either side of him, 2 of his viziers on one side and 2 on the other. And so the king turned to his first advisor and he said, "What punishment do you think should be meted to this man?" And the first vizier said, "Chop him limb from limb and pin him to the gates of the palace as an example to others." And to the second one he asked, "What punishment should we give?" But before the answer was given, the dervish who was standing by spoke, and he said, "It depends on the origin." But then the second vizier said, "Put him in the furnace and let him burn." And again the dervish stated, "It depends on the origin." But nobody took any notice of the old dervish. And then the king turned to his third advisor and asked what punishment. And the third advisor said, "Skewer him with needles. Let the people see and recognize that they cannot mess with our king." This time the dervish spoke up a little bit more loudly, and he said, "It depends on the origin." But then the king turned to his fourth advisor, the young man who he'd chosen, and asked. And the young man said, "Yes, you can punish this man for something that came out of his needs and his poverty. But if you have compassion for him, you will gain the respect of all of your people and have the great blessing of recognizing what happens when good is done." This time the dervish stepped forward and stated loudly, "It depends on the origin." Well, the king was very, very perplexed. What was he to do? But having heard what the dervish had said, he called him forth and said, "What do you mean when you say it depends on the origin?" And the dervish spoke up and said, "Your first advisor is the son of a butcher, and he saw his father cut the animals limb from limb and hang them on hooks. Your second advisor is the son of the one who keeps the baths, and he saw his father every day shoveling wood into the furnace to heat the fires for the baths. Your third advisor is the son of a saddle maker. He watched his father use the great needles to sew the leather to make the saddles. Your fourth advisor is the son of a nobleman who was brought up as an ambassador, learning how to see and heal and help people. The king was astonished. He said, "How do you know the background of my advisors? They have been kept a great secret so that people would not judge them, but allow their wisdom and their knowledge to allow themselves to be known. Who are you? What are you?" said the king. And in that very instant, the dervish disappeared. Everyone present, everyone knew that indeed this was Khidir, the mysterious one. The king gave the camelteer more gold and a pension so that it was ensured that he would live well for the remainder of his days. That night, the king laid with his beloved wife, and 9 months later, she gave birth to a boy and a girl. So the question that arises from this story, recognizing that over these years it has often been said that every character, every element in every story is an aspect, a part of our self. This being so can be asked, who, what, where is Khidir in you? Who, what, where is Khidir in you? Many times over these many years, there are those who have come, and with those that have had a certain readiness, it's been said, you have to make God real. What does that mean? Translated, it's the same question. What, who, where? Is this mysterious, unknown? Khidir in us. How many times over our lifetime have you met your Khidir? The beggar on the side of the road, the stone you tripped over, the man who broke your nose, manifesting in whatever way is needed when change is to be made, when we're at a crossroads. Who, what, where is Kadir in you? Thank you.